Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, I've got just the coolest guest today. So if I have to go back in the 80s, everybody that I've interviewed on this show in Northern California mentioned one name, Joe Satriani. But in the 60s and 70s, everybody mentioned another name, and that's my guest today, which is Terry Haggerty. He's a tremendous player. He was the guy people would come to California. They'd go see him play, whether it's with Sons of Champlin or his own or whatever. And then they'd tell me, they thought to themselves, how the hell can I ever play guitar after seeing, how can I call myself a guitarist? So we're really lucky to have Terry on the show today. Let me tell you about his background. A quick announcement. I just want to thank Bill Champlin from Sons of Champlin, of course, for hooking us up. Another warrior, and then Terry's a warrior himself. And also make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe. Subscribe to the show, the audio, and the YouTube channel there as well. All right, so let me tell you about Terry. He's got a great background, very interesting guy, super deep and really cool, and very sweet person, more importantly than anything. When he was 5, he played and sang How Much Is That Doggy in the Window on TV. And you know what? I'm so old. My mom had that 45, and I remember playing it on the turntable. At age 10, he started his first band called The Countdowns. At 14, he began teaching guitar. And at 17, joined the Musicians Union and began playing casuals. That was in 63. That same year, his dad got him the gig for the Broadway, I guess the California version of the Broadway show, Bye Bye Birdie.
Right.
In 64, he played with a band called the Opposite Six after their guitar player joined the Beau Brummels. In 64, also, he backed up the Everly Brothers. In 65, he started Sons of Champlin with Tim Kaine and Bill Champlin. In 66, they released their first album called Sing Me a Rainbow. And then from 67 to 77, they released 7 more records. After that, Terry did his first session with David Foster, the David Foster, for Circle Filled with Love. In 81, though, Terry developed epilepsy, and he didn't play for quite some time, and we'll talk about that today. In 91, he was playing with Chaka Khan and her jazz band, or I think the C is silent, Shaka Khan maybe. And then Vince, right? Shaka Khan.
Yeah.
Vince Welnick's Missing Man Formation. 95, Don't Push the Clown. 96, Facts or Fiction. And in 98, The Sons Get Back Together Till Present. Terry is also, and this is where it gets really cool, one of the most well-respected and successful marijuana seed geneticists in California. And he's had a very successful crop of weed growing for many years now. He's really into the science of it. And we'll learn a little bit about that today. And he did not smoke a joint while we were in the preamble. I can't say what he did this morning, though. Terry, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, I'm happy to be here. And no, I didn't smoke, because if you want to see tangential, just talk to me after I've smoked a really good one.
All righty. You started playing and entertaining at a really young age, and I was curious, were your parents musical? Is that how that happened?
Yeah, my father was a great guitar player, and he worked with the CBS radio band here in San Francisco for a long time. And then he...
So many of our listeners ordered the last coat when the company set up this special offer for Everyone Loves Guitar listeners. The company wanted to make this offer available one more time, again, just for listeners of Everyone Loves Guitar. So if you didn't get a chance to take advantage of it last month, you're getting one more chance to get free bottles of this breakthrough nanotechnology. So listen up. Hey guys, this is Craig. First of all, I'm really thrilled to tell you about this next advertiser because the owner and I have been friends for close to 10 years. And when I say friends, I don't mean Facebook friends. We're actually good friends. We've been to each other's homes. Our families have eaten meals together, and I've carried his kids in my arms when they were babies. And even more important to you, he's got a killer product on the cutting edge of technology. So if you drive a car, truck, or motorcycle, or if you play guitar or any other stringed instrument, then pay really close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Because because I want to talk to you about the Last Coat. The Last Coat is a proprietary formula that lets you wash, polish, and put a protective coating on your car. It's based on hydrophobic liquid glass nanotechnology, which is an advanced and environmentally safe technology that actually protects any surface, including guitars. The product's manufactured right here in the United States. All you do is apply it once, and it creates an ultra-thin layer which protects your car's surface for 6 months under any kind of driving conditions. Your car looks like you've spent basically all day washing and waxing it, not the 20 minutes it actually takes you. Then anytime your car gets dirty over the next 6 months, just wash it off and you'll see the water beating up on there, and then wipe it down. And that same protective shiny coating that you have after applying it will still be there. It provides protection from rain, sleet, or snow, and there's no more dirty water residue. And on top of everything else, the Last Coat is 100% guaranteed to work, meaning if you're unsatisfied with the Last Coat for any reason at all, or if it fails to live up to any of its claims, just send the product back. They'll give you a full refund, no headaches, no hassles, anytime for 365 days after you order it. And here's the really cool stuff. The Last Coat also works just as well on guitars, basses, countertops, mirrors, anything wood or pretty much any surface at all. I've used it on all my guitars, including my 335, and they're literally mint. To get this product, which includes free travel-sized bottles for your guitar that fit right inside your guitar case, along with free microfiber towels, and on top of that, if you use the coupon code ELG15, you're also going to get another 15% off. To get all this, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/TLC, and don't forget to use the coupon code ELG15, and you'll also get 15% off. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/TLC. Are you looking to buy or sell a home in the Tampa Bay area without having to deal with pushy realtors? Then make sure you connect with West Florida Real Estate. West Florida Real Estate has helped over 300 homeowners and investors buy and sell their properties over the last 5 years. Their service is outstanding, just like back in the days when there was actually service in the service business, and you'll never have to deal with any kind of sales junk when you're working with them. For more information, email Ann with an E at westfloridarealestate.com. That's ANNE at westfloridarealestate.com. If you enjoy this show and you'd like to support it, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/support.
He worked with, I'm trying to think of his name, the really great vocalist. Well, it'll come back to me, but he worked with a lot of really famous people, and then he got into traditional jazz, and that was the most fun thing, because one of the first times I remember seeing him on TV, it was on the Ed Sullivan Show, and it was Louis Armstrong, Jack T. Gardner, Red Allen, Kid Ory, and I forget who the bass player was, and my dad played rhythm guitar. No drum. Yeah, no, and that was like, oh my God, I was so proud of him, and I really loved the traditional jazz, and so he worked at that level and just worked with some of the most amazing bands and musicians, and as he had more and more kids, then he actually got a day job and started working more casuals, and then he couldn't travel anymore. So he'd just take occasional gigs. Like Mel Torme loved working with him, so he would do that every once in a while.
Big names back in the day.
Oh yeah, no, and that's how I learned how to play. I mean, I could play body and soul before I could play any rock and roll.
Wow. Okay. So did your dad teach you, or you just kind of self-taught, but working with him sort of?
Well, he tried to teach me, but we didn't have the best relationship, and I wasn't that good at practicing or really taking any of it serious. I just wanted to do my own thing, but I did have a fake book, and I loved learning the tunes. I loved the Great American Songbook. I just thought matter of fact, that's one of the things I've been talking about with this Hagalicious thing is I have some amazing, Cuban-esque versions of like Body and Soul and, a number of really slamming tunes. And so we're going to put together like a real Cuban band and do like a whole album of those kind of tunes. And then then I just shred the shit out of them in the middle. To heck with them being like ballads or anything like that.
Right on, man.
I just, crank the overdrive up and really just have all those beautiful chords to shred through, and then go back to a nice clean guitar and, play the ballads and like that. Because, I really, if it has anything to do with guitar, I pretty much want to do it if I can.
Okay, so your dad played guitar and your mom was a Cuban performer?
Yeah, no, she was a dancer and a performer, percussionist. And she worked a little bit with Desi and Arnaz there. She got married to a dancer. And so they had a whole dance troupe that they worked with. And that's how she ended up coming to this country. Then she hooked up with Jimmy Durante, and she was like worked on his show and stuff. I mean, she was so beautiful.
That's big time. That he was like huge.
And then she did a few movies with the Mills Brothers, and that's really amazingly beautiful stuff. Because when you see the dance routine they do, it's really pretty highly technical, and they're sitting at this table and they kind of fall asleep, and then their souls just come out of their body and they go into the sky and they dance this beautiful routine in the clouds. And so I was pretty much raised with music all around. And when my dad was doing studio work in LA, we had like about a week straight every year in August where musicians would come from everywhere. And they just stay at our place. We had a really big place in an extra building, swimming pool, barbecue. And they just.
And where was this? Was in San Francisco?
San Anselmo in Marin County.
Okay.
And so for years and years and years, I'd see these amazing musicians come up and play and hang. And I think one of the most interesting things about that is there was a lot of different people, a lot of people that did drugs, carried weapons, but they were great musicians. And my mom would have everybody check their drugs and their weapons. She'd take them all away from them. She'd keep them in the closet.
She's like the TSA.
I'd be watching this stuff, and she would explain to me, Uncle Eddie's sick, and but it was so great for me because like when the 60s came around, and my inner voice pretty much told me that psychedelics were great. And a number of my dad's friends were potheads, and they were so interesting and far out. They were trying to get us to go to sushi restaurants in 56.
Wow. So wait a minute. So what was the environment with weed back then? Was it like really a bad,
verboten, go to jail.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mostly all brothers that basically were into the weed.
Wow, that's amazing. Go to jail forever. Wow, man. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, that's the way it was back then. Yeah.
Wow.
And then
interesting.
That old Fast Eddie, he was like amazing. And he had some of the best herb ever until I met Frank Werber, and Frank Werber managed us. And every once in a while, or when I, eventually ended up being in my early teens, I'd, cop a little pot from some of these musicians.
Yeah. Wow, I can't believe it was that taboo there, even in California. Holy shit.
It was taboo everywhere in the whole entire country. You got caught with pot, it's like, and if you were black or Mexican, man, you were going to jail for a long time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you grew up in this very unconventional environment, surrounded by music, though obviously your love of music developed there strongly.
Mm-hmm.
How did you first get started in, like, I guess, the music business, and what was your first break that you got?
I think the first things that I did were I just played with friends of my dad's. I got good enough and I knew the tunes, and I just started subbing for him. Okay. And that's how I got the Bye Bye Birdie gig. And God, when I was 17 years old, and I guess I was a senior in high school, I also had the gig at the Tudor Room at the Sheraton Palace Hotel, and Jerry Hahn and I split that gig. And so on breaks, Jerry and I wasn't old enough to be in the bar, but they let me be in there because the bartenders were friends of my dad's. And we'd take a break, and Jerry and I would be out there with our Slomensky books and, studying just non-stuff guitar. But, that was really good, like learned a lot of tunes, a lot of two-step. It was like kind of a society gig, a moneyed gig.
Yeah.
And, played a lot of the cotillion balls, and I played one of the cotillion balls for Bob Weir.
That's
Grateful Dead basically
yeah.
was an escort for one of the debutantes.
That's weird. So what is it? Explain what a cotillion ball is.
That's when the debutantes, the echelon of the richest, most cultured people, so they say. They roll their daughters out and they introduce them to society, to that group of folks.
That's wild,
and
man.
They have this big ball, and it's super high end, amazing thing. And
does that still happen? That kind of stuff? Do they still
every year. Are you
really
kidding?
Interesting.
That's just part of the social register. That's how you get in the social register.
Interesting. You see, in the Bronx, where I grew up, when you have your daughters, you keep them away from everybody. You want to make sure no one goes near them. You don't want to roll them out to anybody.
No, I think they have that stuff out in the Hamptons and stuff like that. But
yeah, they probably do. That's wild, though, man. I think I've seen like pictures of that in magazines. Cotillion. I just didn't know what that. I never really knew what that meant. Interesting.
Yeah,
man.
I know. It really is. Like when I think back on it and how long I've been playing music, and a lot of the 60s icons are older than me, but I've actually been playing music a lot longer than that.
Because you're so young when you started, 5. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're with the Sons. What? All right, so let me ask you something about your playing. What did you, in your opinion, not trying to put you on the spot and make you, beat your chest, but like I said, probably 20 people have told me, you were there. You were like Nashville, Brent Mason. People would come to Nashville and watch Brent Mason and be like, holy shit, I cannot do this. In the West Coast, it was you. And then later on, Satriani. And I've listened to your playing. You're very unique in your style. It's, you could tell it's you playing, and you're really very influenced blues and jazz and combining the two together with an electric guitar, not combining them together like in a jazz way, but in a rock. You're playing jazz, but in a rock format, which is really cool and different.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to do back there. And I guess in about, I didn't know too much about the blues, but when I realized I could get records from England,
right,
and get all the early Eric Clapton and a lot of that Skittle music, and because, I had access to the American blues artists, and I really loved them, and especially Hubert Sumlin. I just locked on Hubert Sumlin, as we all did.
Yeah.
But early Eric Clapton influenced me a lot. And that's before anybody knew about him. You'd get those little flimsy records, from England. And and I had so much jazz stuff in me, but I just loved the feeling of the blues, but I just found playing the blues kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so, I just all of a sudden I just started putting together what I knew with, that feeling. And as amplifiers got better, and just started just shredding it more and more, but in that direction. So guitar players would come and hear me, and there was chords and concept and theory and things that for the most part didn't exist or weren't that obvious. And the venue that the Sons gave me, I mean, it was, as a guitar player, you couldn't have a better venue. It was excellent band. Tunes were deeply chordal. And it was so cerebral in the lyrics that it needed many, many breaks of shredding guitar to really kind of pick the thing back up and energize it. So on live gigs, I just shaped myself because, like any entertainer, you want to see the people respond. So I just kind of intuitively did whatever it was that got people excited and started arpeggiating and, just basically a lot of raised 11s and flat 5s. And,
where'd you learn all that? I mean, you're all self-taught.
Yeah, but I loved organ trios, so basically I was listening to organ trios with Kenny Burrell and Tal Farlow. And I loved Tal Farlow. I loved all the really great jazz guitar players. Les
Kenny
Paul.
Burrell. So I just only recently got turned on to him. I'm very late to the party because I've heard so many people mention him. Oh my God. I mean.
Here's an amazing story for you. So I'm with the Sons, and we're playing at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago.
That's a pretty famous place, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really pretty amazing. We were playing there. I think it was Bill Withers, but Michael Bloomfield, who was a friend of mine.
You were opening for Bill.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Michael Bloomfield and the Paul Butterfield band was playing on State Street. So after I got done with the gig, I went down there and saw Michael play. And then he was going, I've got a friend who plays just like you. You gotta come with me and see this guy. So we went to this little club, and it was like the youngest George Benson. I mean, just young. And the guy just was, I was almost crying. I was ready to give up guitar. I was saying, oh, I can't play the guitar. That's unbelievable. But he was such a nice guy.
And it was Kenny.
Then somebody said, well, Kenny's playing a late set down here at this other club. So we went down there, heard the 2 a.m. organ trio set with him playing guitar. And George got so drunk. In the middle of a guitar solo that Kenny's playing, George gets up and he goes, your fingers are broken, old man. Your fingers are broken. And Michael and I are going, oh, my God.
Wait a minute, George Benson?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. It's funny.
He was 19 or something like that.
That's so funny. Oh my. When you were talking before, that's when I was thinking of describing your playing. When Kenny plays jazz and blues, it's more in the jazz realm.
Mm-hmm.
When you play jazz and blues, it's in rock. And some of it is, of course, the equipment you're using, but it's the phrasing more so than anything.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
But that's the guy I thought of when I was talking about you're kind of like opposite ends of the coin, the same coin, different ends of it though.
Right. Yeah. And I loved the way Kenny played, and I love his, again, his phrasing is, and I didn't think he was the best guitar player, but I thought he really had, soul,
he reeks of soul, man. He's deep, man. Yeah. Okay, so you're with the Sons, 12 years. Then you start doing sessions in 77. What happened to the Sons at that point? And also,
Bill quit the band and left and joined Chicago. And a friend of mine tried to help me, get some work, because even though I hadn't broken into full epilepsy, probably by 1980, I was starting to have some real disturbances with my sleep that was bleeding into daytime, and I was having minor petite mal seizures, but I was still trying to play. Had a driver's license, and so, I did some just really generic stuff. The thing that I liked about going to LA was that I played on a lot of friends' albums,
Cool.
And all independent things. So that's, almost everything I've done down there has been pretty much like, I'll come down for free, and then you're going to come up here for free and play on my stuff. But really great players, and lots of the people that were doing all the major work, And so I was lucky enough to have access to John Robinson and
the drummer.
And the drummer, yeah. And JR was so amazing. And that really older album, like from, I guess, 1982, One Fine Day, JR's the drummer on that. And so we had a lot of fun with that. You know, got way too high, but
So let me ask you this. You played sessions pretty much from 77 to 81 until your epilepsy sort of came on full on. During that time, knee-jerk reaction, 3 favorite sessions that you did.
Oh, I think one of my favorites was with my friend Leslie Smith for his band Kraken. And that's a pretty amazingly soulful album.
What's the album called? Do you remember the name of the album?
Yeah, it's this is the it's right on the tip of my tongue, but I don't. Yeah.
Okay, so if you put it out there,
and let's see. I did a couple of things with Gary Novak, and you know, Gary, he played with Chick for a long time, but I don't think anything ever came out of those sessions. I never saw anything released from them, but those were probably the most fun that I'd had, because like all these amazing people were there, and I got to, you know, do some tracks with Lukather and with Landau, and you know, Michael Landau is my favorite guitar player, period, of all guitar players of anything. Like, oh my God, you know.
I just got a hold of him, and he's going to be coming on my show in the spring. Finally, yeah.
Oh, you tell him. Like, I mean, he is without a doubt. We've talked a little bit. He's a man of few words, so that's good that he's going to do an interview. And that Gadify album, I think that's what I mean, he plays some of the most nuanced, amazing stuff.
Really great player, man. Okay. 1981, you develop epilepsy to the extent that you're comfortable. I got to talking about it. I got to believe that was pretty scary.
No, in 1981, all of a sudden my epilepsy totally kicked in. I woke up one day and I had, I don't know, 6 or 7 grand mal seizures in a row. And after I'd had those, my arms were dislocated. I broke every rib. My sternum was broken. I mean, I think I had a concussion from bashing my head so much. It's just this amazingly terrible thing just kicked in. And I mean, it was pretty interesting, because I'd taken so much acid at that point. I had this attitude of like, well, this is the most intense experience you've ever had. You like intense experiences, and you're really getting one now. But it's amazing how with grand mal seizures, how your brain, you know, you have these electrical storms in your brain, and stuff just gets fried, or at the very best, it just gets compartmentalized in a place where you can't access anymore. But I went to Stanford, and that helped a little bit. And when I left Stanford, I had to do behavioral sciences for a long time just to learn how to kind of read and write. And first time I went there, I always thought.
So you lost the ability to read and write because of this.
Oh yeah, and it still affects me. But I mean, I can read fine now, but I'm very slow, and I can write fine now, but it really impacted just a lot of my mental function.
Were you living by yourself then, or were you married, or living with your
I was married at the time, but I think that it was so freaky for my wife at the time that at some point she had to go. You know, it was just too much.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff, man.
Yeah, no, it was. And so, I was saying, the behavioral science thing, I never thought about the square peg in the round hole thing. But when they presented me that, I could not stick the square peg in the square hole.
Wow.
And
so it was just like a it was just like a gap in your cognitive thinking at that point.
Yeah, and I was still me, and I still, there was parts of me that didn't feel any different, but oh my God, you know, that was a very depressing. I remember that being one of the darkest days of my life, going, oh my goodness, I can't do this. I can't put this together. But you know what? The way the brain works is interesting, because it's, you know, you find a thread, you find a point of cognizant, you know, thought, and it's like pulling on a thread. You just pull on it, and slowly, after a period of time, all the content of your brain starts coming back, or most of it. So I would say by, you know, 85 or 86, I regained a lot of my memory and, you know, my, just what made me in my mind, except for the brain damage, which was pretty substantial. So it took much longer to get my playing back. And then, like I was telling you earlier, I had these big gaps in, I just play along and everything would just drop out and disappear. And that's been going on for me for, oh my goodness, a long, long time. It's just been within the last few years where I've kind of repatterned my brain, and like I'm back to flowing. You know, I used to would play a minute guitar solo, and then the bottom would drop out. And so I was just kind of like Mr. Soley, just trying to, because I knew I just didn't have any real legs in what I was doing.
Sure.
But yeah, lately, you know, over this last year, now I can just blow and play, and it's just kind of, you know, it's just all flowing out like it used to be. But, you know, it took about 89, it took some 40 years to really actually rewire my brain in a way where it all works, you know. Had a nice conversation with Pat Martino about having a stroke and doing all that, because he's a friend of Harvey Mandel's. And, you know, it's all pretty similar how it goes, you know, it's brain function.
How did you, first of all, thank you for sharing that, man. It's pretty heavy shit. How did you avoid, and I'm sure you couldn't avoid it, how did you stay remotely positive? Because that's a lot to go through. And it's like that feeling of helplessness, that fucking is tough to, and it's not like you're just down. You're literally helpless because there's certain skills you can't do. How did you stay sort of like positive or committed to yourself going through that, man? That's tough.
I found the thing amazingly fascinating. You know, the first thing that I thought about was, I'm so depressed about not being able to be me and do what I do. But then, because I'm pretty philosophical, and again, I really spent a lot of times in pretty psychedelic states, I just thought, no, this is really a very conscious experience. This is hell interesting in its own way. And you know what? The one thing I'm learning from this is I'm never going to actually take on any part of my identity in such a serious way ever again. As I heal myself, you know, I am me, and there's component parts of me, but they're never going to get fixed like being 20 years old and being the great guitar player that everybody comes to see. Because as sad as it was to lose that, I could also, because of the Buddhist thought that I really enjoyed, I could see the inherent flaws in taking anything into you like that. So I thought it was really, you know, quite the spiritual.
So gift. Like you thought, sorry, go ahead. I apologize. Sorry, go right ahead. You thought it was a spiritual gift.
No, I thought it was quite the spiritual gift of insight into how we shape ourselves. And it was, it was important to have the experience. You know, seeing I was having it, it seemed like it was very important, and it played quite well into my perceptions of consciousness, you know, and seeing they were also rooted in the psychedelic experience. But yeah, all of it started to make more and more sense, and it didn't make me any better, but really brought me more and more into the moment and into the moment. And, you know, I'm conscious, and I've always really loved people, and none of that changed. And, you know,
Wow.
I've always been, yeah, you know, it's hard to really quantify it in a real linear way, but.
No, I understand what you're saying. You, if I can paraphrase, you saw this attachment to something else, an identity you had, and you, part of it was like, man, I need to not get that attached. I just need to be me, irrespective of this guitar or whatever this thing is. Is that
can I call you when I'm doing my bios?
Yeah, but that, man, and then to basically further say, like, in a spiritual way, hey man, God, Buddha, whoever your loving parent is, spiritual loving parent, you said, hey, I'm here, you put me here for a reason, let me just to surrender to that, man, at that young of an age. That's what's really impressive.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't very aware of age. You know, I never thought about those things. I really, you know, I really never thought about that among people. You know, in bands and stuff like that, there's these agreements that you had about working for each other that fell apart because somebody was more important, or they actually were, or whatever. And that brought up a lot of anger and frustration, but none of it was really ran that deep. That was just, you know, experiential, cultural stuff that when you thought about it, oh, this was inevitable. Nobody was going to be married forever in a band.
Yeah. Someone said to me recently, great, they said, bands never fight until they're successful.
Right.
Bands never break up until they're successful. It was really.
I'll tell you one thing they do, though. They start arguing about the money as soon as they sign the record contract, even if nobody's giving them any. They all do the same thing.
Interesting. But man, I really respect, I mean, really admire that at that young of an age, you had the wherewithal or the awareness to sit and say, you know, I'm going to surrender to this thing. And I mean, talk about making fucking lemonade out of lemons. I mean,
yeah, you know, because I think the most amazing experience that I've ever really had was relative to at the end of having the epilepsy. Well, I actually got over the first wave of it and healed myself up and came back from Stanford. And then a couple, 3 years later, I had another bout that was very serious. And when that happened, I got so run down. I didn't lose my, they weren't as serious. They weren't grand mal seizures, but they wouldn't stop. So it was like almost 24/7 I was having seizures and not sleeping. And I went for, 3 months without hardly any sleep, and just all the craziness that comes out of that.
Brutal, man.
And I got toxic shock syndrome from my body being so run down, like MRSA, and so they put me in the hospital, and the doctor just came to me and he says, good chance you're going to die. I think you should make peace with whatever your spiritual practice is, or.
How old are you this time?
And at that particular point, I was like, oh, gee, 30 maybe, 31. And then I got so sick, I just kind of went away wherever you go when you're going away to die. And I wasn't very aware of myself at all. And all of a sudden I became aware of me being me and this little point of light, this luminous little point of light. And it turned into this kind of orange thread. And it started wrapping up where my body would have been. I didn't have a body. I was just like a non-corporal consciousness. But it started wrapping up my body. And at some point, simultaneously, I realized that people were praying for me and I was going to live. And it turns out that Bill Champlin had driven up from LA. He'd heard I was sick. And my wife at the time and my children and my friends, there was probably 15 or 20 of them in a room probably 100 feet away from where I was. And they were all praying. And I'd never believed in the power of prayer. I'd never ever thought of that. And it was such a trippy experience. When I got out of the hospital, I went right down to the Catholic church where I was raised, St. Holmes, and I sat there in front of the pew and I says, I am going to definitely share this experience. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I am committed to sharing this experience because this was so trippy. And I just want everybody to know that, the power of prayer is a pretty good thing. You might want to keep that in your arsenal of things, a nice mantra, the ability to pray,
Yeah. Holy shit, man. I can't.
Yeah, no.
At that point, this had taken up a huge percentage of your life. Right?
Yeah. Huge amount. And actually I was much older than 31. I think I was more like about 35 thinking about it. But that's what led to me doing the Buddhist death work, because, at some point I just discovered a group called Living Dying Project that were, working with terminally ill people. And there's something about having almost died that you can actually sit there with people that are dying and very non-verbally actually understand that, oh yeah, we kind of have a common view of this, so.
Yeah. Holy crap. At what point did these seizures start to remediate?
Oh, I would say they didn't really totally finish until, and I'm still highly medicated. So, and I don't have breakthrough seizures, but sometimes if I'm real stressed, I can still feel that mechanism inside me. But I would say that really almost 20 years later, 77, 87, I'd say up until almost the year 2000, I was still having moments that were pretty squirrely, but I didn't have full-on seizures. And it just forced me to deal with how I take on stress and, the trigger points of all those things,
Man, that's a great, if you could share with 2 or 3 things because I think eliminating stress is one of the smartest, healthiest things that any adult can do. What are some things that you did to eliminate stress? Because I think everybody can benefit from that.
A lot of long walks, a lot of sitting in the woods for a long period of time, try to be still, try to listen, expand your hearing out as far as you can, just sit there. Shit happens,
What about like when stuff, like when in 2009, I went through a really bad run. Just a lot of shit happened to me. And I always try to figure out, all right, what can I learn from this? And one of the things I learned was that, if there's going to be stress in my life, external, fine, but I refuse to bring stress onto myself. And I started on the path of not worrying anymore at that point I really didn't become in the present till several years later, but when I started playing guitar, believe it or not, but I started to say, I need to shed this, and this worry nonsense is all that's me. It's got nothing to do with anybody but in the world but me. And I really made a commitment to try to stop doing that.
Yeah, sometimes I can do it. Most of the times I can do it. There's certain areas where it's just they're pretty big hooks, and
yeah,
I'll sit there and both the wife and I, we can worry about certain things.
Oh, your kids, of course. See, that's the
Yeah,
one.
we'll wake up 3:00 in the morning and go, let's go out and take a poke. Like our minds are kind of running away from us here.
Yeah, and then
a couple of pokes, and then we'll just fall right asleep.
Because the problem is when you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, what's on your mind is I got to fix all this shit this minute. These 30 things that are bugging, and it's not possible. That's the mind fuck about that, man. Wow, man. Thank you for sharing all that. That was really
the funny thing is that's how. Do you know who Joel Selvin is?
No.
He was one of him and Ben Fong Torres are the two big music reviewers.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, Ben Fong is a really good friend of mine and my wife's. My wife's more than me. But Joel basically, I'd helped him with a maid that he had, or a woman that came in to help clean his house, and she was a gay woman, and her significant other died in a car accident, and so his maid had gone into a catatonic state. And this was right about when I started working with terminally ill people, and he asked me to come and see if I would go over and see her. And so I went and saw her at San Francisco General, and it was really pretty amazing. I sat there with her, and I just kind of made like a little prayer sign with my hands and left because she was totally catatonic. And a couple of days later, one of the people called me from there and said, "Well, what did you do? Because she's totally coming back." And they asked me if I'd come back to see her again, and they brought her into a room, and she just made a little prayer sign, and I made the prayer sign, and she was a Latina, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, so we talked for a while, and she got well, and her relatives from Argentina, I think it was, came and got her and took her back there. So that was just a nice little experience. But then Joel called me up and he said, "I've got a friend who's a very good musician, actually somebody who I'd met with the Sons. And he's dying from a glioblastoma, a brain tumor. And I wonder if you would," because he's looking for a Buddhist hospice worker. So I said, "Yeah, no, I'd love to meet him." And went over to his house, and his wife was my wife now, Katie.
Wow.
And it was really interesting. And
man, imagine you couldn't have connected you couldn't have planned that journey if you'd have tried, isn't it? How wild shit happens, man.
And it was amazing to watch her take care of him and how loving she was. And he had an amazing, as a matter of fact, years and years before, like in about 1974, we were playing at the Coliseum there in New York. I'm trying to remember the name.
Nassau Coliseum?
Nassau County Coliseum.
Yeah.
And he had a friend who had been hit by a car and died a hit and run. And he he wrote me a letter and came to see me there in 74 because he was really disturbed about it. So I talked to him about that then. And then years and years later, he was dying from this brain tumor. And when I came in to see him the first time, he was still kind of upright. And Katie says, "Maury, it's Hags. Hags has come to see you." And Maury couldn't talk anymore, but he went, "Ah." And then and he's sitting at the piano, and I go, "Well, how is it?" And he goes, "Dun dun dun dun." He started playing the Jaws theme on the piano. I says, "Oh, I like this guy. This is awesome."
That's wild, man.
He had a beautiful passing, and Katie and I have been together for 12 years. And
congratulations. That's wild, man. Holy cow. I hear stories like this all day, man. But like, this is why I've become much more spiritual since I started doing this show, because I've heard, and it's forced me to look at all the things that have happened in my own life that are like, come on, man, this shit, I couldn't have, you can't connect these dots ahead of time. There's no way.
It's the reason, all these things are the reason I play music. That's what I want to communicate. I never cared about being famous. None of those things really ever even entered my mind that much. I mean, if I wanted anything, it was, get laid, and that was the great place.
Spoken like a real rock and roll star. There you go.
Did you see me up there?
I just wanted to get laid. There you go, man. Let's talk about your marijuana. When did you start getting into weed as a grower and as a seed collector, and how did that all happen?
We had a manager, Frank Werber, who managed the Kingston Trio. And that's when we put out our Sing Me a Rainbow album. And Frank was an amazing connoisseur of marijuana. And I was the only one in the band that really hooked up with him about the marijuana. And I managed to get some seeds from him of this Acapulco Gold he had at the time.
Acapulco Gold. I haven't heard that since I was about 15, man. Holy shit.
Let me tell you, this was some of the most amazing herb ever. Because back in those days, indigenous people grew the marijuana. And, it was like pre-gringo. The white man hadn't fucked with anything. It was just ancient, amazing weed. And when I met the guy who got it for him, one of the stories he told me that was really a trip is he says, every time I get a, kilo or two of this weed, he says, I take half of it and I sell it to the Walt Disney Arts Studio. And then I bring the other half up to Frank. And then Frank distributes among the Kingston Trio, and Herb Alpert was part of the guys that would get this. I mean, it was really high echelon.
Yeah.
People, So one of the first things I realized is, if you don't have a shitload of money and you're a gringo, you're never going to see great marijuana. I mean, it's such a special thing. And I saved those seeds again because I had this kind of botany background, and I just started collecting every seed that I could and putting them away. And when I
just for no reason, just like you just said, hey, let me collect these, or you said, hey, one day I'll try.
Because I wanted to grow them, and I was trying to grow things, but I didn't know that much about it then. Sure. But I realized that they were such precious seeds that they needed to be kept. And back in those days, Owlsley, the guy who made the LSD.
Yeah, that was that down in the Haight-Ashbury, right? Wasn't he?
Yeah. So
Owlsley.
Bear, basically, I got to know him because he would give every band like a little pouch of the LSD. He was making a little leather pouch, and so got these white lightnings and purple hazes from him, and we were talking about my seeds, and he says, you got them frozen, right? And I went, and I thought, oh, that's right. I knew that. You have to freeze seeds to really keep them for any length of time. So from that time, which was like about 67, I just started collecting seeds and freezing them in deep freeze. And I had some partners that I grew marijuana with up in the water company through the 70s.
What's the water?
And got some pretty nice water company. It's like there's a big series of lakes up in Marin County, and it's owned by the MMWD, Marin Municipal Water District. And it was so dangerous to grow pot that you couldn't grow it on your property, and so I'd found this place that was like about a 5-mile hike from the road to this beautiful spot with water and everything, and fenced it all in and started growing marijuana with my partners. But at the time I was in the Sons and on the road all the time. So after the Sons broke up and I'd gotten kind of well from my epilepsy, there was 2 things that I did. I knew a bunch of smugglers, and they started fronting me really cheap pot that I could sell. So I had the best prices of anybody, so I could keep myself going. And then I started growing it to just supplement what I did. And, one thing led to another. I just kind of realized how good the genetics were that I had, and had a couple of varieties that were so amazing. They ended up being kind of the progenitor species of all the Hagalicious that's come about over the last 45 years.
If you're comfortable, what makes the weed you have so unique?
It is very ancient weed. It hasn't been, it's the initial places where it came from, where it was all grown by indigenous Indians. It had, maybe 5,000 or 10,000 years of existing and being grown here in the North American, Central American, Colombia. And the North American genome, as far as like marijuana, I think is the most interesting, just the most really high and, stimulating your intellect. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes it the way it is that I managed to get genetics at such an early time where the genetics hadn't been compromised. Because what actually happened with marijuana is, as soon as people discovered indicas from, the Hindu Kush, like India, Afghanistan, the Russian steppes, places like that, and ruderalis mainly, people started crossing up their very ancient strains with these varieties that really had beautiful flavor and huge giant buds, but they didn't have the alkaloids, they didn't have the chemistry, the molecules that the really ancient stuff did. So as people got more and more weight and grew more and more product and made more and more money, they actually bred the molecules out of the marijuana that really made it great. Okay. So, and that's one thing I feel very lucky about. I was always very aware of that. And I've got a very good friend, Rob Clark, who, when I read his doctoral thesis before it had come out, he had explained a lot about how that chemistry worked, and it helped me really identify a lot of different characteristics about the marijuana I had, make some distinctions about what I wanted to grow or what I didn't. And then in one of the opening pages for my Hagalicious, like, as I roll it out, I've got this thing that says, if it doesn't make me want to have sex or play music, I don't want to grow it.
Great. Awesome.
And so,
what a great mission statement for a business.
Well, just as far as preserving those magic molecules.
Yeah.
And like without those magic molecules, it's not going to do that for you. So that's just really a very simple way of making a really great distinction about, what you're going to grow and what you're not going to grow. And I do so much genetic stuff, and I have so many different varieties that I examine looking for the holy grail, that it doesn't take very much. A few pokes and see how it feels. And, if the musical thing isn't like stimulated, then yeah, it might be good, but I don't want to grow it.
Interesting. So you could tell right away after a couple of hits what you're feeling.
Yeah, no, I have a lot interesting because the marijuana that I have is so strong. I can grow it if you grow it under lights, you usually need to grow it for 60 days, 50 to 65 days. And I grow everything for 30 days. And so if it doesn't really have like a little bit of taste and already have those molecules expressing themselves, I can cut the time in half in exploring my seeds, and I can grow, because I have a real finite period area that I grow it in. I refuse to get too commercial yet, because intellectual theft is really the biggest thing with marijuana now. So I'm very guarded about it. Yeah, no, it is like intellectual property is the biggest thing with this, and there's really no ways of really, even if you have your stuff genome mapped like I do, who's going to police it? Where are you going to get the money to follow people around and accuse them of growing your variety that they stole? It's just the nature of this biz. So
it's like the music business.
Oh, very much. But the music business can police itself just fine.
Yeah. So what is the plan for moving forward to commercialize this venture, or is there none?
No, it actually is quite the nice plan. And I shouldn't really be mentioning my partners in the endeavor, but right now we're looking at buying a facility up in Santa Rosa that's a failed business. Somebody else didn't work for them. They didn't have a very good product. And they've got about $10 million in their facility, and they're willing to sell it for about $5 million. So we're looking at buying that and then taking 2 years of just developing all my genetics, genome mapping them, getting to the point where you can tag plants with a little genetic marker.
Oh, wow.
And really putting all that in place before the rollout is there. Because one of the things about marijuana business now is there's such onerous regulations that nobody makes any money. And Congress is looking at legalizing it countrywide. So that frees up all the interstate commerce, a lot of the onerous taxes. Just almost everything's going to change here within the next couple of years. So my idea is that the amount of time it's going to take for me to secure the intellectual property and develop it to its fullest is about when it's going to be time to roll out, a big business. And people that I'm working with have, many millions of dollars. So it's all doable if it makes sense.
That's great. So at that point in time, in theory, I could be sitting here in Tampa and go online and order your weed and have it shipped.
Yeah. Exactly.
That would be wild, man. Holy crap. Wow, man. That's so,
and if not, if it doesn't work out right, then I'm just going to put a couple of ads in big marijuana magazines and say, come on down and get some Hagalicious seeds for free. Because, everything for me is creative anarchy. If it's not about, a certain level of anarchy in a creative, positive way, I don't want to be involved in it. That's one of the biggest falling outs with Bill and I is like Bill really wanted to do hit records, and I couldn't think of anything that I wanted less. And like I was mentioning Dick Clark, I remember sitting there on American Bandstand and we're working on this tune, and I'm going, I hate this fucking tune. And Dick looks at me and he goes, yeah, it's not a very good one, is it? And I go, nah, it's just terrible. And he says, but the funny thing is, like, if you're lucky, you'll play it for the rest of your life.
Wow. That was like a Sons song, a Sons of Champlin song?
It was Hold On. The brakes are gone. I mean, I just used to hate that tune with such a vengeance. It was like, so funny. I just felt like everything of value in me was ground in the dirt every time we did the tune.
That is so funny, man. But it's funny what he said. He goes, and hopefully you'll get to play it forever.
He says, if you're lucky.
Yeah. I had a guy on one time. I'm thinking it was, I'm drawing a blank. He's a guy in Nashville, Toby Keith's guitarist, I think. And he said to me, he had a meeting with Leslie West sometime. He was hanging out.
Oh, one of my favorites. Oh my God.
I know. Amazing. Right. And he said to him,
man, in his days, like Mr. PAF, like
what a tone, man. Right.
Yeah.
And Leslie said to him something like, hey, don't worry about writing hits. You only need one. Something
yeah,
like that.
That's right.
You know, and it was this reminded me of what you just said along those lines. Okay, so cool. It was rich. I'm drawing a blank. God, it's such a sweet. This is what happens when you've had so many guests on in such a short period of time. This is terrible. I got to tell you, Rich Eckhart. Yeah, Toby Keith. Wow. Anyway, what have been the biggest changes in the weed business? Obviously, weed becoming legal is the biggest, but have there been other changes? Like, I didn't know, you just said
greed and more greed.
But who's getting, like, we were in
nobody's making any money at all. Here's the way the whole thing works. It takes a long time to really develop very psychoactive or a very, rich CBD variety, with, whatever direction you're going. And it takes a long time to develop, a reputation. And it takes lots of money, tens of millions of dollars, to do that on, a real scale that it's going to matter. And the investors that are investing all this stuff, they're classic investors. They have time frames that they want to see a return on their money. So just by the nature of who the investors are in the medical or in marijuana in general, it's a kiss of death. You're bringing in people that don't understand the herb. They don't understand the spirituality of the herb. All they see is the ability to make money. And as soon as it starts taking longer than they expected to take for a return on their money, they start asking the people that are doing the business that they're supporting to start cutting corners, to start selling product before it's time, to accept a lesser product, because they don't understand. And all they understand is, like,
I need
return on your money in the
time
frame. And there's nothing wrong with how they think about it. They're actually quite brilliant thinking that way, but it doesn't have anything to do with really growing good products. So, I mean, I've always been really great in that I just really point out to people, you don't have enough money to be involved with Hagalicious because you're not thinking the right way. You're thinking about making money, but this is a sacred, I'm preserving genetics that are going to be lost to the world, and I'm one of the only people that are keeping them. And I see marijuana as being the ultimate fixer, as far as if you got marijuana like Hagalicious out there into society and people are thinking about it, God, they're just going to be getting all creative and resolving their problems. It's just going to be fine. And take a deep breath. It's okay.
Let me ask you.
I really do have quite the agenda that I owe it to the beats and really amazing psychedelic old first proto hippies that were so highly educated and deeply philosophical, to continue on. People like Wavy Gravy. I love Wavy. I mean, there's just some amazing humans out there that, in my own way, I just really want to contribute to that, and that's more important than anything to me. I'd happily walk away from any of the money to think that, society was relaxing a little bit and having some, nice open
getting along
moments,
not on Facebook arguing about anything. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I could see that whole thing go away.
I hope. Medically, I'm not going to lie and say I've done a lot of research on this, but I see articles from time to time about people really having some significant weed having a pretty significant impact on health conditions. From what you've seen, because you're in this traffic, what are some of the primary health issues that weed has helped?
You name it, any stress related things. And CBDs are pretty amazing. Like my doctor who was against marijuana forever, like a while ago, he said, I used some of that CBD cream on my knee and it really worked. I went, yeah. And you wouldn't write me a recommendation for marijuana because you were all uptight about it, But then all of a sudden he gets it. He doesn't know about smoking it, but he sure knows that medically it really worked,
Is there like a place you recommend people buy CBD or like a certain like strength, or I don't know anything about that.
Most of all the clubs have, real big selection of all that. And, it's all, really quite excellent, and not black market and pure high qualities.
Is CBD a case of where like a lot of things are, you get what you pay for to a certain point? Like for example,
no, I don't think it is, because I think CBDs are, they can make CBDs out of hemp. They can make CBDs out of yeast. There's any number of things that CBDs exist in. So, and you can go down to Long's now and buy, or CVS and buy things with CBDs in them. So,
okay. So it's not like, if you buy a bottle this big for $100, it's going to be better than the bottle you bought for $50.
Yeah.
Not
no,
necessarily.
I mean, there's certain places where that matters, but not with that. And I think it matters a lot more. And like, one of the people I'm talking to about developing those little Keurig coffee things that but like with the I want to call them the hippie speedball. Well, it's actually got the really high content THC and the coffee.
That's funny, man. The hippies, that's an oxymoron, a hippie speedball. Wow. That's funny. But that would be good. Yeah, I could see people doing that. A Keurig.
Oh yeah, well that's a biggie. That's on its way. I guarantee it.
Hey, let's shift gears for a minute. I want to jump back into music and some gear a little bit. I can't imagine how many great shows you've seen. Well, tell me, knee-jerk reaction, top 2 or 3 best concerts you've seen.
Oh, the best one I ever saw was when Jimi Hendrix played in the park, in Golden Gate Park. And it was he just kind of winged it. And I think I got a call from Sam Andrew, Big Brother, and he says, Jimmy's going to be playing down there in a flatbed. And there was a bunch of us that all showed up there, and we all got up on and sat on the trailer, on the back part of the trailer, the railing that. Yeah. And we're sitting right behind his amps watching him play. And it was
That's amazing, man.
Oh my God, just so different, so wild, so unbelievable.
Wow.
That was probably the greatest ever. And then, one of the most joyous moments I've ever had with music was a couple of years ago. And I went and listened to Chris Kane, who he is?
Blues guitar player.
Oh my God, Chris Kane, talk about a genuine, soulful guy. I mean, that was one of the most moving, high, amazing experiences ever. And then probably the third one was listening to the Mahavishnu Orchestra, at the old Yoshi's, which was teeny, and that was just amazing.
Holy crap, Mahavishnu at Yoshi's. Wow. Chris Kane and Hendrix at Golden Gate Park. That's righteous, man.
Just because every one of those things were just filled with soul, love, just like high, the whole room high, no distinction between the musicians and the crowd. It was just a unified field of.
That's beautiful, man. Terry, tell me the best guitar and best amp that you've played, whether you owned it or not.
Well, when I got really sick with my epilepsy, I didn't have enough money to pay my medical bills. So I had to sell all my musical gear. And I would always love to have another. I bought my 1962 L5 in 1962. And I bought it from Sherman and Clay, and I was good enough friends with them because I taught there, that they let me pay for it on time. And so that's the guitar I played with the Sons, and and wow. I ended up selling it for $1,500 because I was, so deep into the epilepsy, and I had to go to the hospital. And the guy I sold it to just told me he'd sell it to me for $35,000.
Yeah.
But then my amplifiers, I had the greatest amplifiers of all. Howard Dumble.
Holy shit.
Howard made me the first 2 custom amplifiers that he made. And he made them for me. So I had a stereo pair of them. And I sold one of them to Steve Kimmock. I sold it to Steve for $2,000. I think maybe it was $1,000.
God, that's a hell of a deal.
But Steve's a dear friend, and that's the amplifier that Steve plays. Steve sounds the way he does because of his beautiful fingers and his approach. But that Dumble really makes him sound great. And so each one of those amplifiers are worth $67,000 a piece.
Holy
so
shit.
I ended up getting $4,500 for $160,000 worth of gear today, but I just didn't have any, and there's no way I'm ever going to have
no choice, man. I had Kimmock on the show recently.
Yeah, I like Steve. He's a good guy.
Really good guy. Wow. Tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs, just for now. Knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, geez, I don't know. Like,
it's a tough question.
The Sermon by Jimmy Smith.
All right.
Are you familiar with that one?
The keyboard player, Jimmy Smith.
Yeah, the organ player. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that.
It's just one whole side, and it's just the blues, and all these amazing Kenny Burrell's on it, and a bunch of horn players, and it's just, that was so formative.
They played together a lot, Jimmy Smith and Kenny Burrell. A ton.
Yeah. No, they were big. They were a thing. And let's see. Believe it or not, Between the Buttons by the Rolling Stones.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, when Brian was still alive, that music I thought was really interesting, and it wasn't like all laden with plagiarism. It had, they had their blues thing that they did, but
laden with plagiarism. That's funny.
But it was real amazingly creative music and stuff. So, it was a seminal experience. And another one of the ones that I really, really loved, that really, because the guy himself is a really dear friend of mine who I have the greatest respect for, was Elvin Bishop's Pig Boy Crabshaw. Do you remember that one?
I remember that record. I have not listened to that, but now I'm just going to circle this because I will now.
Yeah, no, because all those things carried real personal meaning to me and relationship. And on the other side, I could actually go as far as saying that anything that has guitar in it is really influential. So I am so supportive of anybody's guitar playing of any genre. It's the guitar. I love it.
Tell me a couple of things that you might have done that were out of your comfort zone at the time, but doing them turned into big breakthroughs for you.
Well, one of them was that I got the call from concertmaster at the Light Opera. They were doing the Barber of Seville and had a very it's a very simple but classical guitar part where forget what the names of the people in the play, but he's singing a love song to this woman, and it's just this little acoustic part. And I practiced it, a gut string guitar. And I practiced it, and I thought I had it down pretty good. And I showed up there with the orchestra, and it was just not cutting it. And I was probably, 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I remember him stopping the orchestra and looking at me and saying, "Would you play that part?" And I'm playing it, and it's just all of a sudden becomes very evident to me that the level of musicians, and he just looked at me and said, "Well, that's not going to do." And I mean, it was just so humiliating and so mind blowing. And it just told me that, never again will I ever put myself in a place where like I'm winging it.
Yeah.
I really owe it to the other people. And this is just some like 18-year-old hubris that's completely wrong.
Yeah. I've heard this for a
And,
number of people.
oh, and what an amazingly humiliating but incredible learning experience.
You only need to show up unprepared once. Yeah, it's usually what that happens.
One that worked out really well was like, doing the David Foster stuff was pretty amazing, because to put together all his tracks, to have him come in and do all the string work and stuff like that was, we were working with Keith Olsen, and again, like, the whole thing had, half the band had so gone dummy dust and the other half wasn't. And God, it was just so amazingly uncomfortable. And I ended up having to play all the instruments on the tracks that David was going to do his arrangements on. And it worked out great, but it was like the beginning of the end for the Sons. There was just a place where all of a sudden we knew that we weren't going to stay together, and that the commercial, making a hit record, was getting to be more important than being the Sons that we were before. And so when David worked on all the stuff, it was his very first session that he'd done in LA. And
interesting.
Yeah, no,
so his first session in LA was with the Sons?
With my tune Circle, with Still in Love with You.
Wow.
And he knew Keith Olsen, who'd done Fleetwood Mac and everything. He was the guy that produced Circle Filled with Love. So, and he said, "Well, what do you want?" And I says, "Well, just do your thing." And so, he wrote that nice arrangement with all the harps and the strings and everything. And David Gets Off, I think that was the concertmaster's name. And I mean, it was really amazing to have like all the strings playing, doubling all my parts. And have you heard that tune?
No, I'm not. I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah,
man.
Still in Love with You. It's on the Circle Filled with Love. But he was so proud of what he did, and I'd never had anybody do anything like that on any of my music. So that was probably one of the greatest experiences, as far as like, oh God, can you just imagine what it would be like to be popular enough and have a big enough budget to be able to have guys like this working on your stuff all the time?
God, yeah. Wow. Terry, tell me, this is interesting, most important things that you've learned about yourself.
I can say some pretty stupid things, and I can get afraid in ways that basically make me really defensive. But over the years, I've really kind of learned about those parts about me, and I think I'm pretty good now. But I always really tried to do the right thing and do the high-minded thing, and put myself in and would have unrealistic expectations of what people were willing to do or wanted to do or were capable of doing. And so I realized in a lot of ways, I just projected a lot of myself on situations that was kind of just, bad perceptions on my part, and unrealistic expectations of people. So I've definitely learned a lot about that. I've learned a lot about that, and I think I've always been kind and supportive, but I think in some ways, like, I've made it hard for people because certain unexamined emotional parts of me were a little bit more broken than they expected. You know, they expected me to be the amazing Terry Haggerty, and what they got was actually somebody in some, like, you know, like identity crisis mode.
Wow, man. Thank you. I think many musicians I've spoken to have shared similar thoughts along those lines, you know, and that they're expecting somebody to you're just a human playing guitar, you know, and yeah. Thank you, man. Best childhood memory.
Oh my goodness. My best childhood memories was my uncle was a game warden in Trinity County, which is in Northern California. And and he owned a hotel called the Lewiston Hotel. And my grandmother lived there. And so I would go up there every summer for about a month. And I just have the best memories of waking up right when the sun came up. My grandmother would get up, she'd make me breakfast, she'd make me a bacon and tomato sandwich and some food that I'd put in my pack with my fishing gear. Then I'd go out and I'd fish all day and catch all these amazing fish. And then I'd come home and she would always make me like a big New York steak or something like amazingly great thing for dinner. And I do that a month every
cool,
year,
man.
And I love my grandmother. She was just amazing.
You said you had a lot of brothers and sisters?
I have one brother and one sister.
Okay. Did they go up? Were they up at the summers with you up there?
Yeah, my brother and I he's 7 years younger than me, but eventually he got old enough where that was one of the best summers ever, you know?
That's
him
cool,
and
man.
he just tag along and we just caught these amazing fish. And
bass fishing up there?
No, it was all trout and steelhead and, you know, summer run salmon.
That's cool, man. I love fishing. Very peaceful, man. You just forces you to do nothing. Yeah. It's the time you pull out a cigar and you can just enjoy the whole thing.
I love fly fishing. You know, fly fish takes a lot of money to even get to the good places, but I do love to fly fish. I learned how to do it when I was young.
Yeah. Do you make your own lures?
No.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do.
No, I don't know that it's tough. I just never got around to it, you
know. Do you have any non-musical superpowers?
Well, I mean, the power of love is supposed to be like available and common, but that's my greatest power, you know. The ability to unconditionally love other people, you know. You know what? You just like if you have any spirituality in you at all, you do experience through your life a certain amount of almost like ESP. You know, you get to know your mind well enough, you can hear other people's minds. But one of the first things you realize is that these are very private things for people, and even if you could do that, why in the world would you? You know. That's quite insulting, intrusive, like, you know.
Well, it was interesting what you said when I told you before we started recording about if I meet somebody, I never know if they never look like what I think. And then you said, you know, maybe you're seeing inside them what they want to be. I was like, that was pretty interesting because you don't know.
No, you just don't.
Really, you just don't know. Yeah.
You know, one of the ways I look at the world, I think the most important thing in the world is to have the humility to not have to know everything. And there's lots of qualities in the world that are unknowable, really. And to really try to quantify certain things just really takes the spontaneity of life and the wonder of unpredictable things. It just pretty much guts the whole magical part of life, you know?
Sometimes.
So I think most every great gift that you have is probably worth just sitting on and keeping your mouth shut, you know?
Right on, man. Best money that you ever spent on something?
Oh, that's easy. My very first, well, we weren't married, but my son's mother was, her two uncles were Adlai Stevenson and William Proxmire.
Holy shit.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty amazing family. And father's the head lawyer for American Express, and uncle was one of the top people at Dow Chemical, I think it was. Maybe it was DuPont. It was so long ago. But my son, basically, he very brilliant, but we're all autodidacts. We don't do very well with this school thing, you know?
Yeah.
So he, went to Montessori school, but then when he started going to regular school, he just pretty much dropped out of it. He didn't do it. He got straight Fs, but went to the Senate and had lunch there. And they had the very first Apple IIs. And, back then an Apple II was kind of equivalent to about $15,000 of money today.
Wow.
But I'd had somebody that fronted me like about 500 pounds of Thai weed, and I sold it, and I had that money.
Thai weed, I haven't heard that, and Acapulco Gold, and like.
And Ammon says to me, you know what I really want? He says, I really want an Apple II. And so I went down and bought him one.
Wow.
And he was just paid $5 million to sign what they asked him to run the Google Glasses program. And he said he didn't want to because it was really unethical. So this company, Boston Consulting, which is really quite the conservative company, but they paid him $5 million to put together a company that's one of the leading artificial intelligence ethics companies.
And that purchase you made for him set him off on his path.
Oh yeah, no, he's absolutely
wow.
Brilliant. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
Yeah, no, it's the best money ever spent on anything.
What a good man. I hope he listens to this. That's awesome, man.
No, he's an amazing guy. So.
What's nice, special about us is that you think that's the best money you've ever spent. That's what's special about the story, not the money. That you think it's. You know what I'm saying? That is what's special about this. That it means.
No, when I was really getting over being sick and people were fronting me a lot of stuff, I was actually had times where I was really making a lot of money, and I got into wine, and it was a time where you could really buy amazing bottles of wine pretty cheaply. And so I had, 28, 29 Latours, Romani Contis. I had, I just bought into Dr. Burleigh's wine collection when he died, which was like all the most amazing Burgundies from the greatest, chateaus. And I spent some goofy amount of money on amazing wines. Like, I know a lot about wine, and as much as I enjoyed it, it's crazy ass narcissistic stupid stuff, One thing that I did do, which is really good, is like I bought a couple of Magnums of 1971 Latoche, and eventually selling all the Thai weed, then I ended up getting indicted by the feds and almost went to jail.
Holy shit.
So, but I had these bottles of wine that I bought for like about $800 a piece that ended up being worth $20,000 a piece.
Holy crap.
Well, I had a bunch of wines like that. But because, just like with everything else about the epilepsy thing, I needed to raise money. I knew this guy whose wife was a Korean, comfort woman, for want of a better word, and she ran, businesses like that. And he was one of the top wine negotiants here in the Bay Area. And I was telling him, I says, I need to sell my wines. And he says, well, would you consider selling them to Kim Jong-il? And I said, I don't care who I sell them to. He says, well, I'm going to have a guy call you. And this guy called me.
The leader of Korea.
Yeah. This guy called me, and Kim Jong-il would only drink like the most expensive French wines, right? So it turns out that I met this guy, and this guy traveled the whole world, and the only thing he did was went to private wine cellars and bought people's wines and shipped them back for dear leader or fearless leader. Whatever.
Wow! Holy crap, dude! You got some stories, man. Yeah. Terry, do you have any hobbies outside of music? Fly fishing?
Mushroom hunting. Oh.
What is
mushroom hunting is my favorite thing, and I know more about mushrooms than I do about guitar playing by a long shot.
Do you happen to know a guy named Isaiah Mitchell?
No, I don't.
He's a guitar player for a stoner rock band and a writer and a singer. Great, very talented guy. He is into mushroom hunting.
Oh, mushroom hunting is the most fun.
Yeah.
It's like rained out here in the Porcini. Haven't really started coming up yet. Went yesterday and found one, but so that means literally here within about 4 or 5 days there's going to be a nice big burst of them. So,
and what do? You eat them, or you cook them in your food, or?
Oh, you eat them and put them away. And yeah, in my backyard here, I've got a whole bunch of psychedelic mushrooms growing that I've inoculated the backyard with. So.
Holy shit! Wow, that's wild. That's wild, man. Toughest decision you've had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Quitting the Sons.
And that was just because things were getting out of hand there.
The things that I held dear, the Sons were leaving.
And last question, Terry. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Marrying Katie, I think, has so totally transformed me. She's so brilliant and so smart, and she really loves me. And one of the first conversations we ever had when she did a lot of the background stuff for the Wrecking Crew. Did you see the movie, The Wrecking Crew?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love that movie.
And so, I went with her to the gig because she was in charge of putting all the background vocals together and stuff. And we had just started hanging out, and she's such a beautiful woman. And my God, like about 10 people just, people used to come up and they'd push me out of the way, and they'd get right in front of her, and they'd just do their little pitch. And a couple of people were hitting on her in such a way, and I didn't know her that well. And I just left. I just got so insecure, I just left. But I went back to her house. I was hoping everything was going to be okay. And she came in and she looked at me, and the first thing she said was, I felt that way too. I went, oh my God, that is so kind. And she says, I really love you. She says, but nobody's ever really taught you how to reason, have they?
Wow, that's good, man. Having a strong woman like that, that's awesome.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, that was kind of whoever I am now has really been shaped a lot by her and her, indomitable mind. Will. So
she doesn't take any bullshit either.
Oh, no.
That's awesome, man.
She's ferocious.
That's great. Terry, first of all, thank you for everything, man. You got some great stories here, man. You had a really interesting life. You're playing out, and I want to tell people in Northern California where you're at. Terry's going to be playing a gig with Howard Wales, who played with Jerry Garcia. He's an organist in they're playing an organ trio gig at the Redwood Cafe on January 11th, which is a day of the week is that? That is a Saturday night, Saturday, January 11th. It's in Cotati, California, Cototi, the Redwood Cafe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so go check out Terry and his band there and the organ trio, and tell them you heard the show, and you'll see some great guitar playing. Also, Terry's got a shitload of CDs. You can, they're all on all the streaming services. But if you want to buy them directly from Terry, where do they go for that?
Oh, they can just go to CD Baby. You know.
Okay, go to CD Baby. There's some great music here. He's got stuff with Gary Novak here. I like Bomb Bomb. How do you pronounce it?
Bomb Bomb Mahadev. You know what that means?
No, what does it mean?
Well, it's what the sadhus say when they smoke the chillum. And it's Hail, Hail the Divine.
Bomb Bomb Mahadev.
This is a good way to end this because
awesome.
It took me a little over 2 weeks to do that whole entire album. I'm playing everything on it pretty much. And send it off and have it pressed because I was speaking at a marijuana convention. And so initially there was about 500 people that were going to be there. So I got the idea, you know what, I'm going to do a CD. I'm just going to accept everything. It's just going to be a mess, but I'm just going to do it, press it, and leave one in everybody's chair.
Very cool.
So that's why, I mean, I think some of my best playing is on that. But
some real good funky, you got some good funky stuff on here, man.
It's just so unfiltered. And so there's so many mistakes, but I just said, to heck with it. You know, I'm just going to blow through this, put a few guitar tracks down, next tune, here we go. And
sounds
the thing
great.
I like about that one is you can see how I write. I just start with a click and I just make up a tune and I play rhythm guitar to it. And then everything just kind of gets layered on top of that, you know?
The funky stuff on here was my favorite.
We're going.
Great stuff on here. And it's all under his name, Terry Haggerty, Hagg. Although you have 3 G's in here.
Uh-oh.
It was spelled with 3.
That's all right.
You must have been having some Haggalicious when you wrote that one.
Well, you know what? It's always going to be a little fuzzy around the edges over here.
There you go, man. So it's Terry Haggerty with 2 G's or 3 G's, but check out he's got a ton of great music out there. Really great guitar player. A lot of amazing, like I said earlier on in this conversation, if you enjoy a guy that's playing jazz and blues in a rock scene, Terry's your guy, man. No, there are no finer than that.
Well, you know, the guys like Wayne Krantz and Robin Ford and stuff, they always called me the father of jazz rock.
Man, I could see that.
Yeah.
I had both those guys on the show. Wayne was a little more quiet, but they were both really very, very good to talk with, both of those guys.
Oh, my God. Wayne's an amazing guy. And Robin is the most loving guy. He would come to the gigs as a kid. He'd bring his guitar. You know, same with Carlos. I mean, it was just the era that I was in. Everybody bring their guitars to the gig after sound check. We'd sit in the back and play.
Oh, man. That is crazy to think of that.
I spent my whole life playing. When I hear a good guitar player, I just go and tell them, I said, now don't you stop. You're great.
Who's your biggest influence? I know there's probably a bunch of them. Is there any one person that
Oh my God,
that motivated you the most? Maybe not even influence, but just motivated you to play guitar more than anybody else.
Well, I would say LSD did that.
What band did he play with? Hey, man, thank you for everything, Terry. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're a very sweet guy, man. I'm really glad that your health is doing better, man. And I'm glad you're back out playing. And I hope to meet you one day when I'm in California.
Oh, we have a place for you here.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Let me wrap this up and we'll chat. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. Again, if you're in Northern California on January 11th, check out Terry Haggerty with Howard Wales and the Organ Trio at the Redwood Cafe in Cotati, C-O-T-O-T-I, California. Thanks again to Terry Haggerty for coming on the show. Please support Terry's music and check him out. Man, if you really want to see some amazing Terry Haggerty, go back and look at some old Sons of Champlin stuff on YouTube. Holy shit, if you're not familiar with the Sons, what a band. You know, they are pretty much, to me, if you look at what Chicago is, they probably, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine they modeled themselves after the Sons. Great horn sections, incredibly well-written songs, beautifully sung. Just great guitar work on there. So that's, you know, there's plenty of music of Terry to check out. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Terry, thank you for everything, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.